Welcome back to First Christian Church for our Sunday school class this morning, and we are in the book of Exodus, and we are in chapter 5. In our last lesson, we learned that Moses had fled from Egypt to Midian, to that land. He had killed one of the Egyptian workers, and Pharaoh wasn't real happy with him, and Moses got the heck out of Dodge. And when Moses was in Midian, he came upon a burning bush, and God spoke to Moses through this burning bush on Mount Sinai, and told him he wanted him to go back to Egypt with his brother Aaron to free the Hebrews who were slaves to the Egyptians. So that's where our story picks up today. And so Moses and Aaron are in Egypt, and they are able to get an audience with Pharaoh, who is the king of all the Egyptians. And he's, just Pharaoh and Aaron walking down, the aisle as Pharaoh sit on his throne, and all of his servants and military generals sitting around him. And Moses, with no army, no military, says, Pharaoh, I want you to let the Hebrews go. Well, Pharaoh thought that was funny, I'm sure, because he's like, well, why should I let all the slaves go who are doing all of my work essentially for free? And Moses reminded Pharaoh that I serve the one true God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac and Jacob. And Pharaoh's like, he says, who is your God that I should obey him? I am a God myself. I am the one that controls everything. Well, I think Pharaoh was a little full of himself, because Pharaoh really wasn't a god. He was just a man like everybody else, but he tried to convince everybody he was a god and tried to convince that of Moses. But Moses knew better. And after that meeting, Pharaoh decided to make things a little harder on the Hebrew slaves. One of their jobs as slaves was to make bricks. They're making cities and buildings, and they make these mud bricks, and they had to have straw. And previously, I guess Pharaoh and his people would get the straw for the Hebrews so that they could make the mud bricks to build the buildings. Well, Pharaoh said, you know what? I'm going to make you get your own straw now, Hebrews. And by the way, you've got to produce the same amount of mud bricks as before. I'm going to make things harder on you. Oh, when the Hebrews heard this, they were so mad, and they got really mad at Moses. It's like, why did you even come here and make things worse for us? You said you was going to set us free, and all you've done is made Pharaoh madder at us and make that life harder. So Moses was feeling a little bit down in the dumps, and God came to him, gave him a little pep talk. And in chapter 6, verse 7, God said to Moses, and he's speaking to all of the Hebrew people here, I will take you as my people, and I will be your God. You shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has freed you from the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the promised land back in Canaan. He's going to take them back there. They were there before, but there was a great famine, and all of them moved to Egypt. And eventually, over hundreds of years, they went there with Joseph, and over hundreds of years, they became slaves and became known as the Hebrews. And now they want to go back to the promised land. And God's promising them that that's going to happen. And Moses and Aaron are going to make that happen for them if they only believe. So, as it turns out, Moses gets an audience with the Pharaoh again and says, Pharaoh, let my people go. And Pharaoh, still amused by Moses, says, if you serve such a powerful God, do some miraculous sign, some wonder to amaze me. So Moses kind of nodded over Aaron, and Aaron had his staff, like those shepherds have, you see in the pictures, a wooden staff, and that's kind of like a stick. And he threw it on the ground, and it turned into a snake. And of course, Pharaoh was like, "Ooh, yeah, that's a pretty good sign." But then he called his magicians over, and he had his own little wizardry people, and they came. And he said, throw your staffs down. And they did. And their staffs turned into snakes. But Aaron's staff, his snake, went over and ate the other magician's snakes. Gross! Man, I would not want to have been in a room with that many snakes. But in any event, that kind of sent a sign to Pharaoh that, hey, Moses' God is better than any kind of false idol or God you think you have. But Pharaoh was not convinced. He would not let the people go. And so Moses returned a few days later, and he took a pitcher of water. And this is the beginning of the plagues, and there's 10 of them, and we're going to talk about maybe 9 of them today if we have enough time. In the first plague, Moses came to Pharaoh with a pitcher of water, and they were walking by the Nile River. Nile River is a big old river that runs right through the middle of Africa. And Moses and by the Nile River, Egypt had to have the Nile River to survive. I mean, it was their water source. It's where it watered their crops. It's where it was the source of their food. And without the Nile, they just couldn't exist there in Egypt. So Moses took a pitcher of water, walked over to the Nile in front of Pharaoh, and poured the water into the Nile. And the Nile River turned to blood, as red as can be. And all the fish in there started to die, and it stank. But even after that, seeing that miracle, Pharaoh said, no, I'm not going to let the people go. No. So Moses came back to Pharaoh and said, let him go, Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, no, I don't think so. He said, well, your land is going to be inhabited by frogs. They're going to be everywhere. And sure enough, here came the frogs all over the place, all over Pharaoh's palace and all the homes. Oh, it was awful. And then the frogs died, and it smelled nasty. But even then, Pharaoh said, nope, I'm not going to let them go. So Moses came back and said, will you let my people go now? Nope. God's going to bring a bunch of gnats, these little bugs flying in the air that are just going to consume the whole air here in Egypt. And sure enough, that's what happened. All these gnats came in, and they were just aggravating and annoying. And at this point, Pharaoh's magicians started to believe, wait a minute, there may be something to this. But Pharaoh, his heart was hardened, and he was not going to let the people go. So Moses came back and said, all right, well, if the gnats didn't convince you, God is going to bring on swarms of flies, like these house flies, I guess. And they're just going to swarm the land and eat up a lot of the Egyptian food. And sure enough, that's what happened. The whole land where the Egyptians lived were taken over by flies. But interestingly, the area where the Hebrews lived, the flies didn't go over there. And they left the Hebrews alone. And I'm sure people started wondering what's going on here. Well, the flies got so bad that Pharaoh called Moses and says, you know what, if you stop the flies, I'll let the people go. So Moses did. He asked God to stop. The flies left. But Pharaoh lied, and he didn't let the people go. He just wanted the flies to stop. So Moses came back and says, there will be disease upon your livestock, your cows, your cattle, all the goats, things that you eat, camels, donkeys, but not the Hebrews, not their livestock. And sure enough, that's what happened. We had all kinds of disease that just ravished the livestock of the Egyptians. But Pharaoh still wouldn't let them go. Then Moses came and said, there's going to be boils on your skin, like really bad sores, just awful, nasty sores all over your body, but not the Hebrews. And sure enough, that's what happened. Even Pharaoh himself was getting boils, and his magicians, and it was just, they were in pain and agony. And finally, Pharaoh called Moses, if you'll take these boils away from us, I'll let the people go. Moses said, all right, done. And the boils left the people. And Pharaoh lied again and did not let the people go. Then Moses said, God is going to bring thunder and hail, big old hard snow fall out of the sky that can hurt and kill people if you don't let the people go. And sure enough, that's what happened. Thunder and hail rained down on Egypt, which is very rare. It's a dry area. And these it killed livestock, the ones that survived the disease, and killed some Egyptians. And um, and then Pharaoh called in Moses, says, "If you'll stop all this, I'll let the people go." And Moses called God, or asked God to stop it, and he did. And Pharaoh lied again and didn't let the people go. So Moses next said, there will be locusts come to the area. These locusts are going to come and eat all this food of the Pharaohs, but not the food of the Hebrews. And here they came, all these nasty locust bugs eating everything. And then Pharaoh said, all right, if you stop them, I'll let them go this time, I promise. And so Moses got it to stop, and Pharaoh lied again. And then the ninth plague is what we're up to now. Moses said there will be darkness across the land. You won't even be able to see an inch in front of your face over the Egyptian land, but not the Hebrews where they lived. And sure enough, there was just extreme darkness, and it caused agony for the Egyptians for a long time. And Pharaoh said, look, if you'll stop this darkness thing, I'll let the people go. So Moses did. The light came back, and Pharaoh lied again. And next week, we're going to learn about the 10th plague. And it's a bad one, and you're not going to want to miss that story. And it's one of the bases for one of the holidays that you'll have heard. They're pretty popular, and I'm sure you've kind of heard of it. And it's called Passover, and we're going to talk about that next week and learn the history of where Passover originated. So, if you've got your workbook, Finding Your Way Through the Bible, I want you to start, if you're up to where we're at currently, I want you to do pages 133 through 135. You're going to learn about footnotes that are in the Bible and how they work to help you better understand a particular verse or a word, because there's some really complicated words in the Bible. And sometimes you need those footnotes to kind of help you out so you can get the true meaning of what God's trying to say to us in that particular verse. So the one thing I want you to learn tonight from this lesson or today is that, when God calls you to action, don't fight him like Pharaoh did. Accept the call of God. And no matter how painful or unpopular it may be, you're always better to follow God's call than the call of man. And it's important to be truthful, not like Pharaoh who lied every chance he got to, but you need to tell the truth. Even if it hurts, even if it's unpopular. That's how people will know you're a true Christian, is when your yes is your yes, your no is your no, and people can trust what you say. It's so important to have that credibility. And when you have that credibility, people will trust you, and they will listen to you, and God can work through you and send messages through you, and people will accept that over time. So I hope you have a wonderful week. And as you continue our studies of Exodus, feel free to read ahead if you want to, if the suspense is killing you. If not, we will see you next week. God bless.